call for abolition. Now, abolition is a word that harks back to the times before the war to prevent Southern independence, where there were people such as Lloyd Garrison and publishers, most of them in the South, demanding abolition of slavery in the name of God. They were demanding abolition of slavery. They were saying we have to end this sinful practice of ownership of others, especially in light of the fact that the Christian people who were owned slaves were not releasing them, as the scriptures require. Scriptures require that if you have a slave who belongs to God, that you have to release him, giving him 7 years to buy himself back, and whatever he can pay you in that time, you have to accept. You have to accept it and free him after 7 years. So that lets the person who's been redeemed to be redeemed by God to be free finally once he has made that payment. And that's something that was not in view in the South, even though the South was very Christian. There were many Christian people there, and slaves found the gospel in Christian families. But I think often, as one of the critics of this system has pointed out, the use was of Christianity to help to protect slavery, to make slavery more efficient, not that it was seen as undoing of that grand institution in the South and in the North. So we have a new thing to think about in the defense of the unborn. In Hamilton County in 2015, 151 babies were slain. That's 151 human beings, boys and girls, who are they're genetically separate from their mother. A woman who says, "My body, my choice," is really miscounting. It should be our bodies, my choice, because on her 2 feet, there are 2 people. There are 10 toes. There are 20 toes involved. There are 20 fingers involved. There are 2 hearts. There are 4 ears, or 2 sets of ears, 2 noses, 4 eyeballs. And it's not just one person. So it's not just my body, my choice. It's our bodies and my choice. And we have, by the grant of the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln. Now, remind you, we have that grant that these children can be destroyed. Is there any interest in abolition? Now, the question I ask is that of the leading candidate for governor, and her name is May Beavers. She has a minimal statement on her website. She says, "I believe in religious freedom, traditional marriage, and the sanctity of human life, life, which begins at conception." That should not be a semicolon, but anyway, she's got a good idea there, but does it mean that she is for abolition, or does it simply mean that she is for the maintenance of what we have, with maybe a slight reduction in the number of babies killed? Now, I think you want to notice something. If you live in Hamilton County, you are a man who's blessed. And this, I want to just say quickly that I think we can be thankful for God's grace upon this city. And do bow your head. You, my listener, bow your head when the man at the table, maybe your son, gives an offer of prayer to God. I mean, you may not believe in God, and he does, and so he's praying for the blessings of your family there around that wonderful table, with even the old people there and the children and the college student who's there with the dark skin from UTC visiting your table, having found a welcome there. And your son's praying. You don't believe, I know, but he does, and let's hope he prays a note of thanks to God for mercy on Chattanooga. And it's important that he know this fact. And the fact is that that because we have only 151 babies destroyed in Hamilton County and 9,113 across the state in that year, 2015, it's a picture of a gigantic interest in killing babies in places such as Memphis and Nashville, and of people who live in the Tri-Cities here. They're the ones who are killing their babies, right? We're talking here about Tennessee women residing in any of the 95 counties in Tennessee, and only 151 women here felt such godless despair, such dreary monotony of heart and spirit, that they went and killed their babies. There could be many more. We are, after all, a major city in Tennessee, a very liberal city in many ways. We voted for I think we almost voted for, or almost voted against, about half and half against a pro-life constitutional amendment. So there are very many pro-abortion-minded people here. And yet, in fact, the interest in killing babies is less here than in other cities. In Memphis, it's a plague. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of babies killed in Memphis because they're unwanted. And here it's much less. That is a sign of God's blessing of Chattanooga. I want you to know that God has blessed Chattanooga because we kill fewer babies here among the women who reside in Hamilton County. Only 151 girls and boys slain in that year, whereas across the state in gigantic numbers in these other metropolises, 9,113. Is May Beavers for the right to life? And is she an abolitionist? Does she favor abolition? Or does she favor the continuing operation of the death industry in Tennessee? Is she as bold on this point as she is on many other points? She is the leading candidate for governor, and that is because she is a constitutionalist and a Christian. Here is I'm going to give you here a little speech, okay? This is a speech that Dan Fisher for governor in Oklahoma has made, and here's what he has to say about Here's what he has to say about the need to abolish abortion and use the executive power to end the slaughter of children in that state. Okay, well, for some reason I can't make it play, but we are here wanting there to be an example, and this man who is a minister is an example. But you can find this presentation. It's only 6 minutes long. You can find it at the Nooga Radio page on Facebook. That's Nooga Radio. We are live on Facebook, by the way. Also live on YouTube. And I would like to suggest that we should demand an end to this practice, this highly civilized practice, in which men and women are destroyed is very small children. Right? They never have a chance to become men and women. They are destroyed in the safest place on the earth, which is the womb of the woman who conceived those individuals. And so. And so we would encourage May Beavers to think in this direction. In fact, I sent her the link this morning to the Dan Fisher for Governor presentation. We want to take an axe to the root, and that is how it's done. Is to be done by the executive, who is not intimidated, as Roy Moore is not intimidated, and so the next question I want to ask is, what do we want for you? What do I want for you? I want to suggest for the things for which we're thankful. I want to suggest a way of thinking in which a truly grateful man will act. A way of thinking which, if he's thankful to God, or if he has a sense of thankfulness, of obligation to others. If you're not a Christian, whom do you thank after all? Whom do you thank if you don't love God and don't worship God? You have to have this. At least you have a feeling of thankfulness. Okay, that's a pretty bad substitute, but let's say that that's all that many people have. And if you're in that category, I say, well, I respect that, and I would just urge you on in the work of self-improvement. And what I'd like to suggest is that we here in Chattanooga need to do more to support people who are in need. Now, that doesn't mean taking part necessarily in the Grateful Gobbler Walk, which we'll hear about in a few minutes. Where you should take part in that. That's tomorrow morning, raising money for the McClellan House, which is a place where families can stay intact together when they're homeless. I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about not standing by and watching. And I was making note here of an essay from John Whitehead, the constitutional attorney, making note of several instances where people just stood by, and he explains why people stand by and watch. And he mentions, for example, a girl 15 gang raped in a schoolyard during a homecoming dance. 20 people witnessed the whole thing over 2.5 hours and did nothing. And he mentions a 28-year-old woman stabbed and raped, murdered outside her apartment in the morning. 38 bystanders witnessed the attack. Of course, that's Kitty Genovese, died of her wounds in the locked doorway of an apartment building. A 58-year-old man waded into chest-deep water in the San Francisco Bay in an apparent suicide attempt, and for an hour Raymond Zach stood in the shallow water while 75 people watched. They just were watching him. Police and firefighters were called in, but failed to intervene, citing budget cuts, a lack of training in water rescue, and fear for their safety and lack of equipment. And he eventually passed out and died of hypothermia. And then there's another man, another person, a man intervened, homeless, to save a woman from a knife-wielding attacker. And she was stabbed repeatedly. As the Guardian reports, for more than an hour, he lay dying in a pool of his own blood as dozens walked by. Some paused to stare, others leaned in close, one even shook his body and then left, while someone else recorded a video of the entire proceedings. This is how evil prevails when good men and women do nothing. There's a reason that people are like this, and it's worth thinking just briefly about. It's called the bystander effect. There are a couple of researchers, John Darley and Bibi Latani, and they call it, one way of describing this in terms of sociology is called pluralistic ignorance. And what that means is you look at others, how others are failing to respond, and you think that you can't respond because everybody agrees that you shouldn't be responding. Okay, so everyone else is inert, and you're thinking that you can't possibly act because everyone has agreed that you can't act. Okay, just the fact that other people are standing there doing nothing and watching and trying to figure it out. Everyone agrees that we can't act to save this person. We can't step in to intervene because no one else is, right? No one else is, and I can't possibly do that. You believe, though you want to help, you believe that everybody assumes the opposite, that everybody believes the opposite, and so you don't help. And it's also a similar analysis would be the diffusion of responsibility analysis. The man who sees people who, let's see, the more people who see a catastrophe or a wrong or an evil or an incident of police abuse, the more people who see it, the more likely, the less likely any one person will be to do anything about it, right? And that's I want to mention at this point, a man named Cameron Williams. He is the man, I think, who brought to TV9 the report it had on Monday, Driving While Black, Chattanooga PD works with black community to improve relationships. Notice the kind of propagandistic headline on Alana LaFleur's story. And Cameron Williams was observing an arrest of people stopped in a car, and he began filming it and he objected, and then he was arrested. And I'm not sure of the charge right now. Don't remember what the story said about how he was trying to perhaps interfering or resisting or disorderly conduct. Something of that kind. So he was someone who was doing the right thing, and he said, "This is not right. You can't be doing that. You can't be saying that. Use of the F word." I've seen videos where officers are using the F word, and saying, "You ought to be glad that I'm not doing you worse because I don't have time for this." They're just horrible, like the Iranian Uber driver. Or the Middle Eastern Uber driver, just harangued by some officer who's a pettifogging tyrant who pulled him over. The antidote to this kind of thing of just passing by is to say, I'm going to stand up, I'm going to speak out, and I'm not going to count the cost that it might be to me. And I want to be helpful. Think, for example, just recently, there was a story out of Panama City Beach, Florida. A whole bunch of family members got swept out in a riptide that comes when these tidal pools pour. They pour free, and they add to the outflowing current of regular wave action. And several people said, we've got to save these people. So what happened was a few said, here, let's hold hands on the beach, and we'll add people who go on down. So there were 15 people, and finally there were 80 people, and those who were at the end of that chain. It included people who couldn't swim, right? There were people who couldn't swim who were part of that chain to rescue people who were out there foundering, waving and splashing and crying out of reach, right? And even people who couldn't swim were part of that chain, supporting each other, holding each other by the wrist and the hand, and extending the care to those people. And so the ones who were at the end of that chain, they reached out or swam out and got some of those family members. And I believe everybody survived. That kind of thing is the antidote. And in my case, I'm just waiting for God to to bless me with trouble. And the trouble I expect will be in this direction. I'm doing something downtown, and I see an aggressive encounter between an officer and the citizen. And so I'm all I can say is, sir, would you like me to represent you? And in other words, would you give me power of attorney? And so what would happen is that these driving while black couple, let's say, with the children in the back seat, make me their attorney, and I just deal with the officer. I say, well, officer, can you explain probable cause? I have POA in this matter, and please talk with me. That's not UPL. That's not unlicensed practice of law. That is just being a merciful person. Of course, he'll then say, "Are you an attorney?" I'll say, "No, I'm just a writer. I'm just a common drone here in Chattanooga." And so that way I can provide some steeliness in the hearts of these people who don't know what to say, who feel like they have to get out of their car. And we have an officer who hasn't quite gotten David Roddy's message, right? We do allow driving while black in Chattanooga. Okay, guys, we allow driving while black in Chattanooga. Though, as Alana LaFleur says in her Monday broadcast on TV9, it was only 3 minutes long. Too bad. TV is so ephemeral. You get 3 minutes of news of something, an important story like that, and then it's gone, right? It comes, and who saw it at 5 o'clock? Did you see it at 5 o'clock? No. And so it's online, of course. And though the headline is very kind of paternalistic and cozying up to the establishment, it does have some good material in it. And so she got the story because this man, Cameron Williams, approached her, and it became a story when people like you report. Okay, that's our theme here at the station, at Nooga Radio. You report, and the world decides. There are hundreds, thousands of smartphones out there, thousands of them, and we know God has blessed Chattanooga in many ways because there are few reports of abuse. Now, there is clear racist abuse in the Department of Police in Chattanooga, and there's a pending court case which will expose some of that. We know that is there. And Alana LaFleur says in her report on TV9 that thousands of people live in fear of the cops. Okay, so we know that that's true, but it could be much worse. Now, just because it could be much worse doesn't mean that we can let our guard down and say that it's okay, let's just leave things as they are. No, we should not leave things as they are. You report, and the world decides. So let us know. If you have a problem like Hanson Melvin contacted me, and within the hour, I had dropped everything and was giving him all of my attention. That's how we do things, right? And that was our story. Hanson Melvin's story is your story, right? Your story here on Nooga Radio, 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4. Nooga Radio, brought to you by Nooganomics.com, the website for the man who matters. Of course, I'm the editor of that, David Tulis. And I should have mentioned, you can call me at 800-8949, 800-8949. We're going to be looking at a tremendous development in Chattanooga, and that is the solar investment area. And there's a CPA involved in building a solar farm. That's something you might want to be involved in his next go-around. You may want to talk with him about investing in his next solar adventure. So stay tuned for that here on the David Tulis Show. Love your neighbor, we suggest, and buy local. Now, I wanted to mention that we have a couple of slots left on the Small Business Saturday. Small Business Saturday, we will be going to different businesses, local businesses here in Chattanooga, and broadcasting live on Small Business Saturday. That's a great yearly event sponsored by American Express, Amex, the credit card company, celebrating locally owned businesses. And my name is David Tulis, and Sam Jordan and I, and Dean Bostento, our salesman, will be involved in this. We've got some great groups taking part in that event. Riley's Wine and Spirits here in Hickson, also Shooter Supply right next door. The gun shop run by the inimitable Larry Hopper here in Hickson. That's Shooter Supply. Great deals there. East Brainerd Wine and Spirits. Harry's Wine and Spirits also on Signal Mountain. Also, we'll be at the knife shop and Lois Groceries, a couple of Lois Groceries, a carniceria, which is to say a butcher shop, Mexico. You need to try it out. Try out Lois Grocery. You get real Coke there. That is to say sugarcane Coke and fine meats, great little restaurants in each Lois Grocery store. Just make note of that. Also, we'll be at Two Crazy Greeks with Paco here in Hickson. Paco, Escape Experience, Rick Davis, Golden Diamonds, Mountain Oaks Wedding, and Covington Credit over in East Brainerd. We've got a great lineup on Saturday. I've got some slots left. Just contact me, David Tulis.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. And